You know, some things are going on in the Congo. We just hear mention about Rwanda and the Congo a while ago. And just like the Ukraine and Russian war, the Israeli and Hamas war take over everything. So you hardly can't hear anything else outside of that now. Because even the Russian and the Ukraine war kind of take backbench, you know. It's ironical that me heard some American government people them I say, them did I say, Russia commit so much atrocities in a Ukraine and show you all the place where them bomb up on the Ukrainian woman them who after run left them house and all them something there. And them not say the same thing about where Israel do in the Gaza. Worse. Where the Israel do in the Gaza worse than where the Russian them are doing in Ukraine, you know. Because you never see so much picnic are dead in a Ukraine. So much baby are dead. When I watch the screen them after, it's a rebel man. We don't understand how America are back. Well, we understand still Israel. And when you look on where them talk about in a Russia, in a Ukraine, and where Putin did that do. I mean, I defend Putin neither, you know. I just say that we're good for the goose, must good for the gander. And if you could have say atrocity done by the Russian them in a Ukraine, and you see something worse than we are going in a Ukraine now with the Palestinian them, and you come and say this and I come and say that. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. And so Tapazuke have an album here, so we will play for about 2 weeks now, and we just realize every tune on it is a combination with other artists, and there's some artists who we don't hear from for a long time, except Luciano and Bersa Man. But yeah, who remember Tapazuke? We're going to play this tune here by Tapazuke. Yeah. Vintage artists meet vintage artists. You know, we're glad to see the vintage artists, them come forward. Yeah, come like them sick and tired of where I go on, so them come back, come show them versatility. Yeah, man. Me like to see how the artists, them, we call the vintage artists, them, I step up forward to the plate. The other day, we'll say, about a year and a half ago, I say, I want to hear more instrumental music. And I say, a whole heap of instrumental music come my way. Well, I want to hear more vintage artists, like Tapazuke and all them, man, they come forward, because the thing get away. Yeah, the thing get away. We want to listen to this. Come forward to that tune, but we will listen. So, now we play that clip about the Palestinian thing. We want to play it on the other side. I want you to listen to this one keenly, because this one is not easy. Yeah, I want you to listen to this.
Give me a few minutes, guys. Let me blow your mind. Let me begin by saying I stand with Palestine in this Israel-Palestine thing.
Listen.
But there's something going on they don't want us to see. Just before this Israel-Palestine thing, there was this Russia-Ukraine thing that almost like magic, the entire world was focused on this Russia-Ukraine thing like that. And almost like someone flipped a switch, the entire world is just focused on this Israel-Palestine thing. People who didn't even know about Palestine, people who are unfamiliar, everyone is just focused on it. And while I stand for justice, and right now, while I stand for Palestine, at least based on what I'm allowed to know about the situation, there's something diabolical that's happening right now in this world that nobody's talking about. As we're speaking right now, there is a Holocaust happening right now, 2023, in the Congos. Genocide as we speak right now. Just to give you a bit of a backstory, the Congo is perhaps the most mineral-rich place on the planet and produces something called cobalt, coltan. I'm not sure if it's the same product, but it's in the same family. And this particular product is used on all cell phones, in computers, in all of our technical devices, electronic vehicles. Yeah, Tesla. Without this particular material, none of that would work. As we speak right now, there's a rebel army called M23 that is fighting against the Congolese military. This M23 rebel army is made up of soldiers from Rwanda and Uganda. Now, this war is causing instabilization in the Congo. So you understand, any economy with that level of instability, you can steal from them, you can take what you want from them, and there is this constant battle. Now, it will seem as though Africans fighting against Africans, right? So, why would Rwanda and Uganda send people to fight against the Congolese military to destabilize the Congo? It just doesn't make sense until you find out that the armies from Rwanda and Uganda are being financed by the USA, the UK, and France. Now, this is probably a good time to remind you that cobalt is the raw material used for all of our computers, aerospace engineering, electric vehicles, telephones. You guys beginning to understand the picture, right? Man, I really wanted to share some videos with you guys here, but because of the nature of the content that I share, right now my account is on warning status. You understand? So I gotta be careful, but I'm still gonna give you information. Oh, TikTok, this is for entertainment purposes only. Now, in this war that is allegedly funded by the United States, the UK, and France, every single hour, about 50 to 60 women are SA'd. Already over 1 million people have been unalive, more than half of them kids. If we go back to the start of this conflict over 25 years ago, with over 6 million casualties, that would make this particular war the second largest since the Second World War. Yet nobody knows about it. It's not on mainstream media. So it's quite clear to me that somebody doesn't want this information about what's going on in the Congos to be mainstream. Because I'm in the Caribbean. Allow me to speak as well about Caribbean journalism, which in my mind is a joke. Because we only report things that Western media report. The only non-local news our local journalists ever report is things that CNN or ABC or NBC or one of those major guys report. We have no actual investigations ourselves outside of local that's not connected to mainstream Western media. And this is the reason why even our local Caribbean media houses are not pushing this kind of story. Guys, listen, the reason why I really want to be able to push this thing is because Hitler killed maybe about 2 million Jews, okay? And he is called the worst man in history. Leopold went to the Congos, that same place, and unalived over 20 million of the natives there. And up till today, Leopold's name isn't on the list of worst people in the world. There seems to be a very structured effort to treat a certain type of people with less courtesy than others. Hey, I support the Palestinians. I support them. But while I'm supporting the Palestinians, there are people, human beings right now that's suffering at a worse level than the Palestinians are right now. And I'm not minimizing what the Palestinians are going through at all. I mean, it grieves me to see what they're going through. But by God, how could we ignore what is happening in the Congo? I mean, I can't even show the videos on here because I'm afraid that my account will be banned. But guys, let us please give your support to our Congolese brothers and sisters, please. And let me pitch this now to the church. My people, right? Yeah, my people. If prayer works, guys, stop this thing. Ask God to stop it. I mean, does he know what is going on in the Congo? Is God aware of it? Is God in control of everything in this world? I'm not trying to take a jab at the church, but guys, we need to be serious, like really serious, because our brothers and our sisters are being slaughtered in the largest genocide ever in the history of the world. And we don't know nothing about it.
You're listening to Mutabaruka on the cutting edge. Don't get it twisted. Magic says so.
So them want good things stupid. When I go to that again, we come out of that device and all. We are reshape things and we are come to our own conclusion and we have our own logical, rational explanation for what we think and what we do and what we say. We're not going to follow with them until we and how to think. We say it again. Who say what Europeans taught us was the right thing they were telling us. And the things them that we do now that they taught us is the right things we are doing. And the reasoning and the rationale behind what they say is the most logical explanation that can be given for what they taught us. That is the question. Who said that? Why must we continuously use their worldview and their outlook and things to come to a conclusion about our position on the earth, on the planet? It's long time. This a go on. Must have to end somewhere. We see a whole heap of African countries that wake up to certain reality. We hope say it can sustain itself and maintain itself. Because, as we said, things not easy. Things not easy. Them want us to think stupid continuously. And we know, say, we know things. And we gave the earth a lot of things. And it come to the point now where them lick it out away. Lick it out away. And we're trying to reclaim it. We have to reclaim it. How can we survive without reclaiming it, without not reclaiming it? We have to reclaim it, or else we are just going to fade away into obscurity. But that not happen. We're going to make sure that not happen. Yes, we're going to make sure.
Now, I found out that the Greeks, who were supposed to have been the founders of civilization because they were the first civilized white folks, but the Greeks got their civilization from the Egyptians. And the Egyptians were black people. And the Greeks passed their civilization on to the Romans. They couldn't retain it. They lost it. They had a dark age in Europe for 500 years. And then another bunch of Africans, the Moors, from North Africa, moved into Spain and started civilization all over again. So instead of Europe civilizing Africa, Africa has civilized Europe 2 times. They said that the earth was flat like a pancake out in the vastness of space, with the sun and the moon and all the stars going around it. The ancient Egyptians in the Pyramid Age, 6,000 years ago, knew that the world was round. They knew that it went around the sun in 365 and 1/4 days. They measured the circumference of the earth, and they calculated it so accurately until modern astronomers said their error was only 1 yard. Circumference of the earth is about 25,000 miles, and they calculated it with an error of about this, 1 yard. African history. The reason I'm talking to you about it is because it's not in the textbooks. And it's not in the textbooks because we don't write textbooks. We have other people write the textbooks, and they put that propaganda in there, and we are supposed to swallow it.
So there with you. So we want to play this, you know, over a couple months now here we've been playing some clips about the transition that is taking place in Africa, especially in Northern Africa, as it relates to the French so-called colonies. We are talking about like Mali, we are talking about like Niger, and others, Togo. We want to play this because Nigeria was one of them where start to run out the French ambassadors, just like how just like how South Africa now is chasing out the Israeli ambassador and closing down the Israeli embassy in Southern Africa, South Africa. Well, Nigeria, the junta, as them is called, they get the coup and decide say enough is enough. Just like the other ones them who they say enough is enough for French domination and French exploitation. We want to play this. Listen.
Just imagine within 3 months of a coup and ejecting France, Niger is going to become the 4th fastest growing economy in the world by 2024, according to World Economic Outlook projections. And Niger will be the fastest growing economy in Africa. Some of you may ask, where is Ibrahim Traore on this? Well, Burkina Faso will be the 9th fastest growing economy in the world by 2024, and the 6th fastest growing economy in Africa. There are other countries in Africa that are making good progress, like Libya, despite being in war mode. But I just wanted to focus on Niger and Burkina Faso because of the obvious reasons. You know, when Niger increased the price of uranium from 0.8 euros per kilogram to 200 euros per kilogram, immediately after the junta ejected France, critics laughed at them. Now see who is laughing. Imagine French companies were selling Niger's uranium at $200 per kilogram and giving $11 to Niger. But 200 euros versus 0.80 euros? I wasn't prepared for that. Anyway, I want to say congratulations, Niger. Africa is rising, and this is our moment. Listen to this video.
Even our thieves are not patriotic. When they steal from Africa, they invest in Europe. They don't believe. The minister said, fix our own governance system. The people in charge of governance system steal and invest elsewhere as an indictment or an affirmation of their own incompetence and incapacity. But the second bit is that I think both His Excellency Moussa Faki, Professor Lumumba, and the minister indicated, when you grow a disconnect between the people who give you legitimacy, who are the ultimate resource for the transformation of any nation, when you grow a disconnect between your culture, Amilcar Cabral said, every revolution is first a cultural revolution. There were 200 coups in Africa between 1965 and 2012. In the 1960s, there was at least one coup every 60 days. In the 1970s, barely 18 years after Ghana's independence, at least 85% of African states had some coup experience or the other. And West Africa accounted for almost 44% of those. I mean the coups between 1958 and 2008. There was a temporary reprieve in the period post-1990. Some academics have suggested this because Africa had become more democratic. I want to disabuse you of that notion because it's lazy intellectualism. What had changed was that Western interest in a unipolar world, in changing regimes, had dissipated. The West no longer needed to use force. There was no competitor, either ideological or otherwise. What had essentially happened, there was dominance of one set of interests. So as we reflect on unconstitutional change of government, it's not just mere tinkering at the local level, but it's also what explains the ouster of Nkrumah, the assassination of Lumumba, the assassination of Sankara, the assassination of Amilcar Cabral, the assassination of Samora Machel, the ouster of Sékou Touré. What is the fact? That in a unipolar world, the appetite to change had dissipated. As we see greater polarization between the West, the East, and the Middle, we're going to see once again an intensification of interference. First African country got independent 1957. There is not a single Jewish person who will allow you to forget the Holocaust. And in fact, there are crimes, not just in Israel, across the world against denial of the Holocaust. US foreign policy, Israeli foreign policy is very key. It's a central issue. Africans, for some reason, must forget something that happened 50 years ago, if you are Zimbabwe 80 years ago. Listen, we must always remind our friends from Europe and elsewhere that slavery was a crime against humanity, as is colonialism and neo-colonialism. That killing Sankara in 1984 because you are opposed to communism and plunging his country into chaos that you are now solve as a problem of poor governance is a shared responsibility. So we will take responsibility for our nakedness, but for goodness sake, a naked emperor cannot lecture us about how to be clothed. And I'll tell you the contradictions. When Europeans first came here, if you come to the south of the continent, ladies did not wear long skirts and they did not cover their top. Then they said, no, that's indecent. So we covered everything, including the head. And then the Europeans have decided to go nude now. Now the dress code in Europe is pre-colonial Africa. And then when our kids try and dress up that way, we say it's an African. We are confused around ownership. So lastly, Chairperson, the taboos. You see, Chairperson, we need to talk about global anti-black racism, the treatment of African migrant laborers in the Middle East, in the Arab world, and in the Asian world, and in Europe, is a matter for the African Union to constantly pronounce itself on. And I'm glad, Chairperson, you issued a statement on George Floyd, but I'm waiting for the African Union resolution from last January on reparations. There was a formal policy of the United States government in 2015 for reparations by companies behind the Holocaust. There needs to be, the conversation on reparations is not to be settled by African political elites, right? Today, Zimbabwe is paying back white commercial farmers reparations. But when you talk about any reparations, it's like the black body is not worth repair. What we must do is endure, be resilient, go forward, don't look back, trudge on. But today, with the scramble of Africa that PLO was talking about, they will interfere here, whether we put in place the right policies or we put in place the good governance. Why? They need the lithium. And if your right policy is not consistent with their green energy transition that they control, they will take you out and they will cause instability. We cannot do it as single countries. We are not uniting because it's the good thing to do. We are not uniting because it's the principled thing to do. If we don't unite, we will perish. If each one of our small countries, as economically unviable as we are, rush in order to prove distinctiveness, I'll tell you what will happen. We will be so fragmented intellectually, politically. Our institutions will have no meaning. Let me end with something more positive. I think Pan-Africanism flavor is alive today. You adults, you only listen when you have had a few glasses of wine to Afrobeat. And of course, you don't like this thing. They're always singing about body parts and so on and so forth. I want to suggest to you, one of the most revolutionary things that the African Union, under the leadership of the chairperson here, has done is to talk about arts, culture, and heritage, not as entertainment, not as add-on, but as part of imagining the future economy, is to talk about the digital, not as part of little things you do, but as part of building the economy. All that's left now is how do we defend African art, culture, and heritage, not only in Africa, but globally. How do we make sure it is the mainstream of AFCFTA along with all the other big things we do? And how do we, in the digital economy, make sure we are not consumers of products that are produced elsewhere and not part of the production chain? If we do that, our Pan-Africanism is economic, our Pan-Africanism is cultural, our Pan-Africanism is intellectual, our Pan-Africanism is also spiritual. Just remember what Chinua Achebe said. We are not the children of Africa. We are the parents of Africa, because the Africa that we want is yet to be born. And we are the ones that history has charged with the responsibility to give birth to the Africa we want. So whatever we are frustrated with respect to the African Union, our responsibility is how do we make the normative frameworks and the institutions work, but how do we build the repository of expertise so that the African Union at any given time has access to the best brains, the best technical expertise in any field on the continent. The intervention in Iraq was couched in very benign terms. The intervention in Libya was couched in benign terms. I could give you 100 interventions where the justification, objectively speaking, was on the basis that there was evidence either of genocide or evidence. I'm sitting in Rwanda. The international community stood by as the genocide against the Tutsi happened. Yet in the same year, they were intervening in West Africa. The construct of benign and malign is controlled and related to the question of narrative and strategic self-interest. We've often not paid enough attention, and thank you, Chairperson of the African Union, for educating us on how the international fora of decision-making, the Security Council and other fora, including at some stage how we transact within the International Criminal Court and other platforms. That evidence, and that was my point, we don't control data, we don't control digital platforms, we therefore are not controlling narrative in both analog and digital forms. What can practically be done? We do need to speak to Europeans, not as victims, because the erasure of the contribution in European consciousness of Africans to modernity and civility has constructed a white supremacist view that sees the evolution of modernity as a singularly European contribution. And it is only now that our young researchers are beginning to excavate the contributions of black people, of Africans, towards inventions. Because until now, the province of economy was not the province of black people. In my country, in Zimbabwe, when land was taken, a British court gave a judgment that said, the question before them and who owned the land, they said, one thing is certain, it cannot be the native because the native has no sense of ownership. It was on that basis that land was taken. Number two, on the question of economics, even we pejoratively only talk about our people as informal law, informal economy, yet the informal economy is formal. That's how India developed through its cottage industry. We have a psychotic addiction to colonial definitions of what, and that's why Professor Ashraf is correct. It's not just a narrative about our contribution historically, it's a narrative about our contribution now. Our young people who developed M-Pesa, which is now being used globally, who developed Ushahidi, which has been used by over 300,000 organizations, including the Japanese, the US military, and the NATO forces, are never sufficiently credited. Why? Because it is not in the current psyche of most Europeans possible that Africans are anything else except the object of charity that deserve our mercy and our pity. Why? Because they are governed by tyrants, right? Or Africans are incapable of ethics. And we've constantly said that Switzerland, which received the Abacha loot, which received the loot from the then Zaire, now DRC, has constantly been ranked in anti-corruption indices as the cleanest country in the world. PLO and I are lawyers. The receipt of stolen property is theft at law. How is it that you will have Nigeria and Kenya ranked so far, and yet the country that receives the money ranks so up? I think that if you're changing narrative, you also have to change behavior. Our African leaders and citizens constantly confirm the European caricature, an object of pity. When we come into this spaces, we can never transact revolution in courtesy. I like to be civil, to be courteous, right? But each time I start pointing to atrocities committed by African governments, the Europeans and the Americans cheer me up. Each time I refer to the historical atrocities and continuing atrocities committed first by governments and by companies that are dumping cyanide into our underground water and nuclear waste, right? You know what it is said? This is retrogressive. It's undermining investment. It's again, listen, we cannot win the narrative battle by arguing in pockets. They are happy us talking about our localized, indigenized oppression. They are never happy us talking about the question of distribution and redistribution of the global economy, of global power. And what Nkrumah and others realized in 1963 at the founding conference, if Africa is not represented, if Africa does not own its narrative, but you can't own your narrative if your leadership is totally disconnected from its people. You can't own your narrative if your intellectuals are totally disconnected. We have underinvested in rural areas and slums where the majority of our people are. In fact, we treat them as security threats and they are over-policed. Number two, we have underinvested in our academic and research institutions. We'd rather bring McKinsey and bring Deloitte and Touch. They will help us do AU reform. Why? Because there are no African consultancies that we know. Even if they exist, we have no relationship with them to help us with AU reforms, with anything else. And this is not a pronouncement on McKinsey or Deloitte. It's a pronouncement on ourselves. We have not, as a leadership, begun to recognize that the native is capable of knowledge. The native is capable of economy. The native is capable of invention. You can't change the narrative if the starting premise is we're trying to be like Europe and to catch up. We can't change the narrative when we're constantly trying to learn from others without understanding, and I'll end with that, what William Tunga said, the former Chief Justice of Kenya. He says, let's not engage in this romanticist view that there can only be one way to learn. We first must indigenize knowledge. That's what I say, learn from our culture and traditions. Number two, we must diversify who we learn from. We can not only learn from the West, we need to learn from everybody who has something to teach. Number three, we must domesticate what we learn. If we're going to learn anything, let's domesticate. I think the chairperson and the minister said it's consciousness. Narrative is first and foremost by realizing self-worth, self-belief, and looking inward, so that when you look outward, it is to supplement not a vacuous state of nothingness and inferiority, but it is to supplement a very stable, solid foundation where your culture, where your values, where your value for people is important.
You know, that speech needs to be played over and over and over again. Yeah, man. It must play like when we play hit songs. Yes, SAL.
Yes.
Blessed.
You know,
Mutabaruka.
Yeah, man, give thanks.
Give thanks, I Yeah, man, long time listening to the eye program, you know?
Give thanks.
But they call from out of the country still, you know?
Oh, which part? Which country? Which country?
They are US of you know. We up in one place where them call them Maine.
Oh, Maine up at top there, up at north there.
Yes, sir.
We up past Boston there, up at Boston area.
Yes, sir. We up.
Yeah, me know, yeah.
From your hard, you know?
Yeah, me go there already more than one time, but that's a long time.
Yeah, come here already.
Yeah, man, years ago, man.
Yeah, man.
From in the 80s.
Yes. But at the time, this brother at Capleton, we come on here to take in a show, you know, where him do. You know, don't have one place to call him Portland.
Okay.
You know? I don't know if you really listen to the news, the other day, them have a terrible mass shoot, you know, the one.
Yeah, you mean in America?
Like, in America, man.
Oh, no, but every week they have mass shoots in America.
Well, that's a true still. But I tell everyone the go on so way. Nobody never did expect them a claim say them look a place here, one look a place where.
Yeah,
you know?
Quiet.
Not too go.
Yeah, pure Christian people.
Yeah. Mainly up that story you don't know say a 1991 that the relation in terms of, you know, certain people.
Yeah.
You know, mainly, you know. Nowadays you see. I was coming about 20 years ago, you know. About 20 years ago. I was coming here to look good to see black people.
Yeah, man, that's true, man.
One and two. Yeah, man.
When we go to show up there, no black people in the audience. When we go to show up there, no black people in the audience, you know. In them days there.
All right, yeah. But yes, we just give thanks for, you know, calling from the eye program because here is me, I listen to the eye from the eye just the cutting edge.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
From your younger youth, I'm here 6 years now, you know.
Oh, yeah?
I'm a 6 years. I'm a 6 years now. Young boy thing again.
Yeah.
And a long time I listen to Mutabaruka. I mean, I said, you know, we give thanks for the eye. As one of the voice, when I give up.
No, can't give up, man.
Distance, the voice is,
our life, you know.
We keep on. Eh?
Our life, man, we can't give up. If we give up, we're dead.
We can't give up. And most of all, I man give thanks to Rastafari.
Of course.
I tried for so long, and I've worked behind of people who, you know, go through so many judgments, Rasta. Go through so many judgments. And there is one of them who stand up.
Still stand.
You know, fight the fight. I mean, I hope say, I hold it to the end.
They don't want to say can't go to the end.
Listen to that a lot. On that time, I said, you know, told Jamaica run. I want to smooth go with their run as a MP. If it could have changed things.
No, we have changed things as always, you know. Things that change as we are now, you know.
Yes, but it seems like the more things change, the more we remain the same Rasta.
Yeah, but if many people would have done it already, would have stopped already. But a whole heap of things not change still. But we're not going to say we are talking vain. We're not talking vain.
No, we know that still. But when you look at certain things, you know, the condition of the people.
Yeah, it makes you feel depressed.
Younger youth, they will come now, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes you feel depressed, man. Yeah.
Like say, one step forward and 10 steps
backward.
Yeah,
we see all of that.
We don't like that.
Yeah.
We don't like that. And I just say things that change. And we have to fight for that change then. And we have to continue to work towards that change then. You know,
yes, of course.
And sometimes we can't to look only to the politician them because we know say the politician them bridle by higher powers over them too, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and them know, but them can't tell the people because certain decisions where politicians to make. If they make it, then they're going to have terrible prize.
Yeah, them lose them work.
You know, against it. Them lose them work. It's a job, you know. It's a job them have, you know.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be a job. Running the country shouldn't be a job, you know.
No.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a job. Yeah.
No, it should be like the service of your nation and your people.
Yeah.
You know, see it.
And you get an honorarium. You don't get paid.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I hold you too long still.
I don't know.
Without a yard, there's man here up on my place, them call him Kill Park. You know, it's a place where I used to try to shoot to, you know.
Remind me right there. Oh, no, I don't cans?
I don't cans them under the Kill Park I'm on from.
Okay, yeah.
The ice that jail, barn and blow up.
Yeah,
I've got them on there.
Not only so we bury him, I mean, them have the service fee when him dead.
Yeah, you go at 9.
Yeah, man, when him dead, man, they have the service to man.
John Moore.
I don't count the service it keep, you know. Yeah. I don't count the service it keep.
Okay. I'm not even to get straight there and there at the time when they talk to me. I'm bridging still, you know.
Yeah.
I'm a bridging, man.
What about bridging? Yeah, man.
Like Kill Park, man. Upset all.
Yeah.
You go on, no.
Yeah.
You go on, you know.
Yeah.
Give thanks to them because the man was a vibrant man, you know, a positive youth.
Of course.
At the time there, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, man,
yeah.
I start here. Can't get them man there. You know, but as you know, I know, we are just like to hear up the mother still, you know.
All right. You could all asleep, man.
You could all asleep, but more shout it out still, you know.
Well, you have to tell your name that if anybody hear your name, they will tell her. You have to talk your name.
I mean, them call me Tony, you know. Enough man, most man know me as Ochid.
Okay.
Football team.
All right.
Time, you know.
Yeah.
Most man know I as Ochid.
So Ochid heal up in mother.
Yeah, that's a Miss Dorothy Bell.
All
Everybody
right.
know as Aunt now, you know.
Okay.
And yeah, you know, part of you in the Kill Park.
Mm.
Man like Butteras, a 12 guy brother there, you know.
Yeah.
I tell you want them. And they said, you know, see it.
Yeah.
And we just want to tell the Rasta, continue with the work smooth.
Yeah, man, we have got you, man.
Enough support what you have to get, you know.
Yeah.
And anytime you decide to chew up, you're hacking at the ring.
Yeah.
And say, oh, me step up and lead some people and pass it on.
I know me know we're at a turban me wear, you know.
A turban you wear?
Me not have none for sure, you know. Me not have none for sure. Me not have none for sure, that's that. No. We don't have that. We're going to fold it up and put it down nice and easy and put in a drawer.
Well, however you do it, you know, as long as you decide, say, you know, going at the thing.
All right,
and
sir.
show the people how things can work, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Give thanks,
man,
Bridget.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
And the area of support, you know?
All right, sir. Give thanks. I tell you, it's rough out there. We're going to take the first break and come forward. I want to say, remind you that this is the Cutting Edge on RFM. You know, we have a sister who we can say repatriate to Africa for about 20 years now, you know. And she went to South Africa. And every time we go to South Africa, she make it her duty to make sure it's everything all right and we go where we want to go. Asantewa, how you do?
Sanbonani, greetings, beloved, Baba Muta.
Remind me now, the last time we woke up in South Africa, was it when we go to Winnie? Or Winnie where they go?
No, after we did Winnie, then you came back and we did Johannesburg when you did another program that we had with Art Alive. But
with Rashni.
Yes. So the most important one was with Haile Garima. And
when the movie, true. Yeah.
Bringing back Sankofa, the movie that was banned in South Africa.
Yeah, remember.
So good to hear you. So good to hear you, Baba Muta. You know, just to think that I've come to Jamaica and I would not have been able to come on the cutting edge when I've been on the cutting edge for over 20 years.
No, from you say there, you know, me line it up with Shamara for talk to you on the radio. So, if you know, we couldn't make you live again and not talk to you.
We give thanks.
All right, so tell me what you've been doing in South Africa now. Because I know you're well busy. What have you been doing down there?
Well, yeah.
Apart from married and all these things. Tell me what you do.
Well, we've opened up the Pan-African, the Africology Pan-African Cultural Center in KwaZulu-Natal, a school given to me by the late King Zwelithini on 10 hectares of land. And when I go back, I am now getting ready for the training, the teachers, Marcus Garvey Teachers Center, which will be starting up in February, looking at history teachers in primary school and how we can help them and realign how they understand how to teach Africa's history. So those are the small things that we're trying to make sure we lead some institutionalization of the work, Baba Muta.
So you're just in Durban, you're there still? You're just at Durban?
Yeah, I'm in Durban, but I'm also in Limpopo. Okay. And we have a center that we started in Rwanda. And we already had the one in Ghana, but now we're moving out to Zimbabwe, to Bulawayo one. So the institute itself has been moving in terms of a memorandum of agreement with other Pan-African institutions in different parts of Africa. But yeah, that's what has been keeping I really busy with that.
All right, so I want to ask, since the death of Winnie Mandela, how is things down there in terms of the vibes with the ANC, the new government and all them things there? Because, it's a really Winnie Mandela we are work with, So,
well, unapologetically so.
Yes.
Well, the truth is that, Muta and the listeners of the Cutting Edge, the truth is that South Africa is regressing, and the whole idea of white supremacy entrenching itself under the disguise of democracy and the political parties have become a blatant, the operations of white supremacy has found its way to be blatant again, once again in South Africa. So the legacy but one of the things that you'll be happy to know, Baba Musa, is that the longest road in Johannesburg at this point is called the Winnie Mandela. So we've taken off Hendrik Verwoerd Road, and it is now called the Winnie Mandela. Yeah, so
beautiful.
So we quietly, and that's a significant move because
a long road.
So long. Yeah, man, very, very long road. So for so long, they've tried to kind of stem our legacy and thing, but the fact that the youth them cry out to make sure so that she's never forgotten is an important thing, And of course, I was there at the burial of her granddaughter Zoleka, who passed away 2 weeks before I came forward. So the family is going through lots of changes, deep changes, because it's 3 generations of the matriarchy that is no longer there.
So what do you think about this prime presidential? Because I hear my look out against Israel and say them are going to revoke the embassy, Israel, and close it because of the atrocities where Israel are going with. What do you think about him?
Well, the embassies are closed, and today all the women marched on the American embassy in Pretoria. So basically, I think the ANC and the president of the the ANC president, and who is also the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has no other choice because the allegiance between Palestine and South Africa is one that is very deep and is very grounded. So there's no other way that even with the diplomacy that they've tried, they had to take the side of the Palestine, because remember, the Israelis are in an occupied territory. And we know what apartheid feels like in South Africa.
Of course, it was an occupied territory.
Yes. So it seemed like him for this one, him on the right path, and him not buckling under no external pressure on this one, Musa.
Whatever happened to Zuma? When I hear about him again?
Well, President Zuma is doing well. We had a nice Thanksgiving thing for him in September.
Oh, yeah?
President Zuma, yeah, man. He's in his 80s now, and, running the foundation, doing his cattle because he's a big cattle farmer now, so he's busy on his farm. But strong and doing well in the community because he's back in the place he was born, Yeah.
Still Durban too. Is Durban?
Yes, in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah. All right. You're up here now. What you make the journey for? You come visit. Where you make the journey for?
Well, basically the journey is really one to make contact. I always say I have to come and touch base, but not for very long. Touch base with the ones who are my elders, my parents, my siblings who are here. Just to touch base and the fact that the elders are getting older and more sickly, and try to see, you know, how we can realign certain things, you know, so that they can get more longevity. But secondly, sorry, the University of Johannesburg Pan-African Institute was being hosted by the University of the West Indies, where there is a 5-year MOU between the exchange program between UWI and the University of Johannesburg Pan-African Institute, basically looking at exchanging anthropology students between, you know, the Caribbean and South Africa. So that's the first part. And then, as you know, right now, as I speak, we have the Deputy Minister of Arts and Culture here in South Africa, from South Africa, signing the athletic agreement in terms of the exchange between athletes, direct exchange between athletes from South Africa and Jamaica. So in 2019, the government of South Africa appointed me the social cohesion advocate in nation building for South Africa. It's a position basically looking at where the country is going in terms of the nation building pact, you know, and of course trying to enforce the Pan-African ideals of Africa for Africans, you know. And you know, Muta, more than anyone else, that's not easy in South Africa to have such a mandate.
No, I mean, with all the whole heap of rise again of white supremacy, as you say, and the black people, them get so westernized in them thinking, that is really a feat in itself, you know.
It is a feat. And even, you know, Muta, setting up a Pan-African Institute in a village, you know, amongst village people, because that institute, you can't just come off a tar road and get to it. You have to drive within a village to get to it. And the most beautiful thing is that it's endorsed by the king, the Zulu king, you know. So it means that it must be replicated in many of the other places across KwaZulu-Natal. But we're facing challenges because, as you know, the Prime Minister of KwaZulu-Natal, the late, may his soul rest in power, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, is no more. And that's a whole tree that has been, you know, cut off from us. And so the nation, the Zulu nation, really is trying to find itself, especially in the so-called contemporary time. And that is proving to be a real salmon up going up the stream kind of situation.
All right, tell me something now. The xenophobia is still a hot topic in South Africa.
The Afrophobia, you mean, Musa?
Well, that's a xenophobic.
Yeah, xenophobia is for the others. The direct Afrophobia, the fear of Africans by Africans, is what we're trying to deal with. And we haven't had any escalation of it, but definitely we're dealing with the idea that Africans who own spaza shops in South Africa, for example, the little corner shop, now they're cutting that down to say it's only South Africans must own these corner shops. So those are the challenges, but it's a deep-seated Afrophobia that has taken root, you know, and we're definitely trying to work around that, because it not just only deals with the spaza shop, it deals with those who want to migrate, those who want to do work in South Africa. You know, it's easier for Europeans to get certain things done quickly than it is for the African people who are just across the border, like Zimbabwe, like Botswana, as you know, like Lesotho. So that thing still simmers, and we're going into elections next year, so it's going to be a very interesting time, Muta.
You think the what you call Afrophobia now would be a part of that in terms of the election, where people will cry out, say, part of it should be the removal of all of the African, them who's not South African, out of businesses and other places that them find themselves in, you know, I mean, the working force of the, for instance, the Ugandans and the Zimbabweans and them people there. You think, say, during the election, the South African have a fight, say, them need to go back home because they might take all the job them still?
I don't think the South African government is bold enough to even put that as a tagline, or the ANC in particular, you know, want to put that as part of their focus. I think others will try it, the other small parties, but you have a man called Julius Malema who's saying, no visas for Africans from nowhere. So, you know, we know that Jamaicans don't need visa for South Africa, but he's basically saying for every African coming to South Africa, there must be no visa, there must be no...
I hear him say it,
you know? So I think there will be chances who would want to do that, but no.
Why is it that them? I mean, I don't know if actually I say why is it, but the idea of the Africans developing armies in certain areas, spotted areas, and training them children for a pending, what them call it, attack of Africans against them. Them are develop armies and structure them children for really look at one of them days the black South African them are going to attack them. But we find say it's like something that develop in South Africa where white people feel say I feel them land, they have feel them land and them will die for it. It's like it's weird. How that stretch out in South Africa so long?
I see you something, Muta. It really is what we call umsangano. I think you like that word. Umsangano means madness. In isiZulu, it means that we are still being forced to accept certain things. Certain ones, and they're the first to tell you that they are the third generation of people who came to the land. You know that, Muta. They always say that, and we are aware that you have a place called Orania. As you know, Muta, there's a place in South Africa where white people have their own currency.
At the place I'm talking about, how them allowed to do that? How them allowed to do that?
Well, there's been a lot of legal battles around that, but it's one of the sad cases of the Mandela effect, the Madiba magic, and the so-called forgiveness factor. Because in a sovereign country, you can't have another society having its own money, its own pipeline, its own all of that something there.
And black people can't go down there.
And you can't enter.
Yes.
Not even to work. Them no want to there. So
but how the government allow that? A black government allow that in South Africa?
Yeah, well, you remember that there's a thing called the Sunset Clause, Muta, and remember the thing called Codestra, where them say private lands cannot be touched. Yes. So that's another element we have to deal with because the land is still not being handed over. And so, as you have been watching, I hope, with Julius Malema, we're saying you can't say willing buyer, willing seller because nobody sold you the land.
Yeah, willing buyer, willing seller, them foolishness there.
Yeah, nobody said. So basically, there's a big drive to say, but the land wasn't sold to you, so we don't know what kind of negotiation, because now what they've done is up the prices of negotiation, right? So that the compensation the government wants to give, them want it 10 times.
Yes.
Where it value,
But it looks like the Zimbabweans, they might make more progress with the land, to take back the land, even though the British did after Mugabe passed away. Them did a CPing back upon the land. But apparently there's something happening in Zimbabwe where the Zimbabweans them say, no way, we don't want no more flowers land, so we want food land. I don't know if you hear about that.
Yeah, no, Zimbabwe Muta has really stabilized, and the good thing about it is that they're still pushing the indigenization project. However, them still under sanction. So as long as they're under sanction, Muta, you'll always find that them still going to push back against the disagreement of the Lancaster Agreement, because there's no way that you can still say you want to work and live in Zimbabwe, but you still have sanctions on the people. Right? Zimbabwe has stabilized.
Okay.
Yeah, Zimbabwe has stabilized, Muta, because now, the real, you can find that the productivity is coming back. Because remember, Zimbabwe was the breadbasket of the continent.
So
I think they've spent a lot of time in South Africa, the Zimbabweans, and there's a lot of them now going back, making sure that there's business, there's a lot of movements going, forward to Bulawayo, to Harare, back to those places. So we are seeing a turnaround. The issue for Zimbabweans is this, ridiculousness of the money and the fact that they are still in sanctions after they've done everything that, the so-called Western world has said they must do, So that is a problem around SADC region.
Yeah. All right, so where are you going next now? Tell me, I go back to South Africa, I go somewhere else in Africa.
Yeah, well, we have works in Rwanda. I'm now the UNIA lady president for Southern Africa. So we have chapters in Kimberley with the Soul Plateau UNIA chapter. We have in Alexander. We're putting up one in Soweto. So I return home next week, and then we're going to be doing some movements up to Rwanda, because Rwanda is a very interesting place, and there's a lot of movements. For example, when you're touching Rwanda, Muta, you don't need to go to no immigration, right? It's just a machine where you put your passport and you go through. But you can't enter Rwanda with any kind of plastic. Then you will be sent back, because them not believe in a plastic, them not believe in a litter, them not believe in a, people are take all them things and a piece anywhere they want on the road. It's a country that we need to watch, and people will criticize Kagame.
Look, them say the Singapore of Africa. Them say the Singapore of Africa.
Yeah, well, it's true. I've been there a couple of times, Muta, and it's a place worth seeing. It is unbelievable what happens, and every month, wherever you come from in Rwanda, as a leader, as a political person, as a cultural, celebrity, whatever, at the end of the month, you have to go back to your community and clean it up and build whatever is needed to be built. And it's the most beautiful thing to experience in that country, where even the president has to go back to his village and he have to deal with, and everyone is side by side in that work day. And it has to be make sure that it's old people who don't have no home. It's children who are child-headed households. I mean, it's something that is a phenomenon. So you find that everyone is really, according to how it works, have to go back from where they come from to clean and develop that place where they born and grow. And it's something that I think most African countries most of the Eastern African countries have now taken that work of Rwanda,
I'm going to ask you a question now. What is your take? Two things. What is your take on the British sending refugees to Rwanda, and also Rwanda involvement in the Congo region with the whole heap of atrocities that are going on there? What is your take on it?
So first of all, what I always remind people is that what we call the Congo, what we call Rwanda, as you know, Muta, it's borders that should never have existed.
Yeah.
So we are dealing with borderlines that are superficial, and we're dealing with borderlines where the people from that village know that they belong to a certain part of what is now called Rwanda, right? And it's the same thing with Uganda. It's the same thing with Ethiopia and the Oromo people. These borders that have been enforced on us has caused a lot of internal tribal disputes, right? So that's something that we must take in context when we think about Rwanda and Congo, right? Rwanda is surrounded by 14 countries, right? So here is this country that's trying to survive from all of the atrocities of the genocide, and yet their land was taken by the Belgians. So the part that we call the Hutu part was taken and cut and given into the Congo. So there's a lot of dynamics on the ground that we don't get a time and a chance to go in. With respect to the British, and someone asked a black Ghanaian, like, why are you coming here? What are you doing here? Why do you come here? And the Ghanaian turned around and said to himself, why did you come here? What were you doing there? What did you want there? And that question has to be answered in the context of, they are trying to stop migration. They're trying to say we don't need any more Africans in Britain. We don't need no more Africans in Africa. But don't forget, you're the one who forced yourself in there. And so this whole saga of putting people in Rwanda and whatever was for me a dishonest approach. That is what that was being used by the British government, and the fact that Rwanda took it on. Some people saw it was a good thing because then it means that you can rehabilitate and go back into your continent. But for me personally, it was a wrong move. I think it was
well, the British court say it's illegal.
It is illegal.
Them charge it as illegal. Something the British are going must cease and desist from doing it.
Yeah, well, it can't hold any ground. It can't hold any ground. So why is it that this asylum seeker and all these UN codes of who can migrate and who gets what, in Britain changes when it comes to Africans? Yeah. And that is something that Africans need to get right, that the laws were not ever written for us to be part of it. We were never considered in any of the laws of the United Nations.
Neither with the Constitution of Jamaica, it was not in favor of we, the people, you know.
Well, I don't know if that has changed either, you know. But the idea is that Jamaica is an incorporated, is a company, and so even you know, even you know, when people try to claim things, I was shocked when I heard somebody talking about the crown land.
Yeah,
I mean,
them still have it.
You still talk about crown land.
Yeah, because the crown still have the land, King Charles land or King Charles land.
Oh, ja.
Yeah. Anyway, we give thanks for hear your voice again, you know. See, hey, me ready for come down. Hey, tell Ratchet say me ready for come back to South Africa.
Yeah, me know it's that time, and I think the 30th year, it's going to be 30 years since the so-called freedom in Azania. So there will be some movements between South Africa and Jamaica to mark the 30 years. Yeah. And I know that you have to be considered in that, you know. But most importantly, you know, your works continue. Your latest album has taken a lot of traction amongst young people. And when I said I was going to Muta, they were like, can you get him to sign something? Because I said, no, you know how to follow him. So the youth, I'm still listening to you.
That's why I say, tell Rashid must have ready, because most of the time I come down there, she organize it, you know, and set it up. So I will reason with her when I go forward. But we give thanks continually for your health and your strength. And we give thanks that even in this time, you know, Baba Muta, you are able to churn out new versions, you know, of the old information. And we continue to know that there is someone like you that will live forever and ever. And it's a beautiful thing that, you know, when I get onto the program, I know that this is Baba Muta to Ashantua, you know, because we've been on this journey for a while. Of course. Yeah, man, give thanks, give thanks.
See a bonga, cutting edge people, I could go and cut the edge.
All right. That is Santua, as I said yourself, she left 20 odd years ago. She left Jamaica and got to South Africa to live. And now she's knitted in the fiber of South African society, especially the Zulu, you know, Durban. Yeah, my favorite place in South Africa, Durban. Okay, we'll continue the journey. Before me forget, you know, I want to heal up the people them in Atlanta who take care of the weekend, you know. Atlanta, you know, man, hey, I will leave. Them a come down this weekend, you know. I never know so much people. I say them a come down after Ital Fest, you know. But I will leave for the ones them who come and show them over there and the gathering will happen. I say them and them way to the Ital Fest, because in the program over there, every food in there is what them call vegan food, you know. And it's bully parcel there. I sell food and it's vegan food. And we hear them say them a come at Ital Fest, so we prepare for that. But we give thanks for Kofi, my brethren, who responsible for Osway in Atlanta this weekend, yeah. And we give thanks to all the one them who really make us feel good. Because we think they're cold, you know. Because we just left England and people tell us, boy, you think England cold? Wait till you reach Atlanta. But when we reach that pure sunshine, believe you me. So, yeah, man, give thanks. Yes, we're there with you. Go through the places. Just start with the sister who live in South Africa now for 20 odd years. Santua.
The informative information presented in this video is motivational and is positively aimed at inspiring, educating and entertaining the viewers with the cutting edge of critical reasoning. If you enjoy the contents on the Black Radar YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to show your support.
This is Mutabaruka. We want to present to you a wholesome kind of level of consciousness right now. So, subscribe and tell your friend them. This is Mutabaruka.